12 years. That's how long my own family pretended I didn't exist because my sister lied and destroyed every relationship I had with them. 12 years of silence, of birthdays spent alone, of achievements celebrated by nobody, of crying myself to sleep wondering what I did to deserve being erased from their lives. But here's the thing about being abandoned, it either destroys you or it forces you to become someone so strong that you don't need them anymore. I chose the second option. I built a thriving dessert business from nothing, scraped my way to success, and bought myself a stunning estate that represented everything they said I'd never achieve. The day after I moved in, my sister showed up at my door like 12 years of silence was nothing, smiled that fake smile I used to fall for, and said, "Hey, I'm moving in. You don't mind, right?" She actually expected me to just let her walk back into my life and take what I'd built. She had no idea who I'd become in those 12 years. No idea at all. I'm Quinn, and this is the story of how betrayal turned me into someone my family no longer recognized, and how I learned that the best revenge isn't confrontation, it's becoming successful enough that their opinions no longer matter. Let me take you back to where it all started, because you need to understand the depth of what she did to me. My sister Brooke and I grew up in what looked like a normal family from the outside. Middle-class suburban life, two parents who worked hard, the usual sibling dynamics. But there was always something off about how our parents treated us differently. Brooke was 3 years older than me, and from the time we were kids, she had this way of manipulating situations to make herself look good and me look bad. If something broke, I broke it. If someone was lying, I was lying. If there was conflict, I was causing it. She was subtle about it, strategic even. She'd do things that I'd get blamed for, then play the victim so convincingly that our parents never questioned her version of events. I spent my childhood and teenage years constantly defending myself, constantly trying to prove I wasn't the problem child they seemed to think I was. But the more I defended myself, the more it looked like I was making excuses. It was a trap I couldn't escape. When I was 23 and Brooke was 26, everything came to a head. I was working 2 jobs trying to save money for culinary school. I'd always loved baking, loved creating desserts, and I had this dream of opening my own bakery someday. Brooke was working in marketing, living in an expensive apartment she could barely afford, constantly asking our parents for money to supplement her lifestyle. She'd been dating this guy, Marcus, for about a year. He was successful, charming, came from money. Our parents loved him, saw him as the perfect future son-in-law. Brooke treated their relationship like a competition she'd won, constantly posting photos, talking about their future, making sure everyone knew she'd landed someone worthy of her. I'd met Marcus a handful of times at family dinners. He was nice enough, but I didn't think much about him beyond being polite when we crossed paths. I was so focused on my own life, my own goals, that I barely registered my sister's relationships. Then one night, Marcus showed up at the restaurant where I was working my second job as a server. He sat in my section, and when I came to take his order, he said he needed to talk to me. Said it was important. We stepped outside during my break, and he told me he was unhappy with Brooke. That she was controlling, manipulative, that the person she presented to the world wasn't who she was in private. He said he'd been trying to figure out how to end things, but she'd threatened that if he left her, she'd make him regret it. I felt uncomfortable with this conversation. This was my sister's boyfriend confessing relationship problems to me, and I wanted no part of it. I told him he needed to talk to Brooke directly, not me. That I couldn't help him and didn't want to be involved. He apologized, said I was right, and left. I went back to work thinking that was the end of it. I had no idea it was just the beginning of my nightmare. 2 days later, Brooke called me screaming. Actually screaming so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. She was calling me names I won't repeat, accusing me of trying to steal Marcus, saying she had proof that I'd been pursuing him behind her back. I was completely blindsided. What are you talking about? I haven't done anything. Marcus told me everything. He told me you've been texting him, meeting up with him, trying to convince him to leave me for you. How could you do this to me? Your own sister. My stomach dropped. Brooke, that's not true. None of that is true. He came to my work once to talk about relationship problems with you. That's it. I told him to talk to you directly. I haven't texted him, haven't met up with him, haven't done anything. Liar. He showed me the messages. Your number, your name, everything. That's impossible because I didn't send any messages. But she wasn't listening. She'd already decided I was guilty, and nothing I said was going to change her mind. Within hours, my phone was blowing up. My mother calling, crying, asking how I could betray my sister like this. My father calling, his voice cold with disappointment, telling me I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Aunts, uncles, cousins, all messaging me with variations of disgust and anger. I tried explaining to each of them what actually happened. That Marcus had approached me, that I'd told him to talk to Brooke, that I hadn't pursued anything. But Brooke had gotten to them first with her version, and apparently Marcus had backed up her story. He'd fabricated evidence somehow, fake text messages that looked like they came from my number. And everyone believed them. My mother said something I'll never forget. I always knew there was something wrong with you, Quinn. Always knew you were jealous of your sister. But I never thought you'd stoop this low. That sentence broke something in me. My own mother, saying she'd always known something was wrong with me. Like I'd been defective from birth and this was just confirmation of what she'd suspected all along. I tried for weeks to clear my name. I showed them my actual phone records proving I hadn't sent those messages. I explained the timeline, the single conversation I'd had with Marcus. I begged them to consider that maybe, just maybe, Brooke was lying or had been lied to. But I was fighting against years of established patterns. Years of being the scapegoat, the problem child, the one who caused trouble. This was just more evidence of what they already believed about me. The final straw came at what was supposed to be my grandmother's birthday dinner. I showed up hoping that maybe in person, maybe with the whole family together, I could finally make them understand the truth. The moment I walked in, the room went silent. My grandmother, the woman who'd always been kind to me, looked at me with such disappointment that I wanted to disappear. Brooke was there with Marcus, and she was crying, playing the wounded victim perfectly. My father stood up and told me to leave. Said I wasn't welcome, that I'd hurt this family enough, that they needed to protect Brooke from my toxic presence. I stood there in that doorway, looking at faces of people I'd loved my entire life, and saw nothing but contempt and judgment. No one was defending me. No one was asking questions. I was already convicted. Fine, I said, my voice shaking with rage and pain. If that's what you all want, I'm gone. But you're making a mistake. You're believing a lie. And someday you're going to realize that, and it's going to be too late. My mother actually laughed. A bitter, cruel laugh. Always the victim, aren't you, Quinn? Always everyone else's fault. When are you going to take responsibility for your actions? I walked out. And that was the last time I spoke to any of them for 12 years. The first year was the hardest. I'd lost my entire family in one moment. Every holiday, every birthday, every milestone happened in complete isolation. I had a few friends, but they didn't understand the depth of what I was going through. How do you explain that your entire family chose to believe a lie rather than listen to the truth? I fell into depression. Dark, suffocating depression where some days I couldn't get out of bed. I'd lie there thinking about how unfair it all was, how I'd been abandoned for something I didn't do, how the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally had cut me off without a second thought. But somewhere around month 14, something shifted. I was lying in bed one afternoon, having called in sick to work again, staring at the ceiling, when I realized something. I was giving them power over my life even though they weren't in it. I was letting their betrayal define me, destroy me, keep me stuck. And I decided I was done with that. I got up, showered for the first time in 3 days, and started making a plan. If they wanted me gone from their lives, fine. I'd be gone. But I'd build something so successful, so undeniable, that their opinions wouldn't matter anymore. I'd prove to myself, if to no one else, that I was worth something. I enrolled in culinary school using student loans and savings. I worked full-time while taking classes, barely sleeping, pushing myself harder than I'd ever pushed before. Every time I wanted to quit, every time the loneliness threatened to swallow me whole, I'd remember my mother's words. I always knew there was something wrong with you. I'd use that rage, that pain, as fuel. I graduated top of my class. Got a job at a high-end bakery where I learned advanced techniques. Saved every penny I could. And 3 years after being cut off from my family, I started my own small dessert business from my tiny apartment kitchen. It was called Quinn's Confections, and it started as just a side hustle. I'd make custom cakes and desserts on weekends, deliver them myself, slowly building a client base through word of mouth and social media. The first year, I made maybe $3,000 total. Barely worth the effort. But I kept going. Year 2, I started getting corporate clients. Companies ordering desserts for events. That bumped my revenue significantly. Year 3, a local food blogger featured my desserts in a post that went viral. Suddenly I had more orders than I could handle. I hired 2 part-time assistants and rented a small commercial kitchen space. Year 4, I was making more from my dessert business than my full-time job. I quit and went all in. Years 5 through 8 were a blur of growth. I hired a full staff, opened an actual storefront, started shipping products regionally. My signature item, a lavender honey cake, got featured in a national food magazine. Orders exploded. By year 9, I had 3 locations and was looking at franchise opportunities. The little side hustle I'd started in my apartment had become a legitimate business generating 7 figures in annual revenue. I should have been happy. I was successful beyond what I'd imagined. But there was this hole inside me, this absence where family should have been. I'd achieved everything I'd set out to prove, but there was no one to prove it to. The people whose approval I'd once desperately wanted were ghosts to me now. Year 10, I made a decision. I was going to buy a house. Not just any house, but the kind of house that screamed success. The kind of house my family would see and know I'd made it without them. I found a property that had been on the market for months. A historic estate on 5 acres, built in the 1920s, with original architectural details and stunning grounds. It needed work, but it was magnificent. The price was steep, but I could afford it. I made an offer, it was accepted, and 6 months later, after renovations, I moved in. If you've ever been abandoned by your family and had to build your success alone, if you know what it feels like to be blamed for something you didn't do, subscribe right now because what happens next is going to show you that sometimes the best response to betrayal is success so loud they can't ignore it. The estate was everything I'd dreamed of. High ceilings, original hardwood floors, a massive kitchen perfect for testing new recipes, gardens I could get lost in. It was mine. Proof that I'd survived, that I'd thrived, that their rejection hadn't destroyed me. I'd been in the house exactly 1 day. 1 day of unpacking boxes, arranging furniture, starting to make this beautiful space feel like home. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. The few friends I had weren't supposed to come by until the weekend for a small housewarming gathering. I walked to the front door, opened it, and froze. Brooke. Standing on my porch like 12 years of silence was nothing. She'd aged, obviously. She was 38 now to my 35. Still put together, still wearing that confident expression like the world owed her whatever she wanted. "Hey," she said brightly, like we'd just seen each other yesterday. "Nice place. I heard through the grapevine that you'd done well for yourself. A dessert business, right? That's so cute." I stood there, unable to form words. The shock was too complete. This was the person who'd destroyed my life, who'd orchestrated my alienation from our entire family, and she was standing on my porch calling my successful business cute. Anyway, she continued, pushing past my silence, I'm actually in a bit of a situation. My lease is up and I'm between places right now, so I figured I'd crash here for a while. You've got plenty of room, obviously. Won't be any trouble at all. She said it like it was already decided. Like my home, my space, my sanctuary was just naturally available to her. You're not serious, I finally managed to say. Of course I'm serious. We're family, Quinn. And honestly, it's been long enough. Water under the bridge, right? We should move past all that old drama. Old drama. She called 12 years of exile, 12 years of pain and isolation and having to rebuild my entire life, old drama. The rage that flooded through me was white-hot and ice-cold simultaneously. I'd imagined this moment, imagined confronting her, imagined all the things I'd say if I ever saw her again. But standing there, looking at her expectant face, I realized something. She expected me to cave. She expected the old Quinn, the one who'd spent her whole life trying to prove herself, trying to be good enough, trying to earn love and acceptance. She had no idea who I'd become. No, I said simply. Her smile faltered. What do you mean, no? I mean no, you're not moving in. No, you're not welcome here. No, we're not moving past anything because we have no relationship to move past. You destroyed that 12 years ago. Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. That whole thing with Marcus was so long ago. Don't. My voice was sharp enough to cut. Don't minimize what you did. You lied. You fabricated evidence. You convinced our entire family that I'd betrayed you when the only thing I did was exist in a way that threatened you. I didn't fabricate anything. Marcus said you. Marcus lied. And you know he lied. You've probably always known. But the lie served your purpose, so you went with it. You got to be the victim, got to have all the attention and sympathy, got to have me erased so you could be the only daughter who mattered. Her expression was shifting now, the friendly facade cracking. You're being ridiculous. If you can't help out family when they need it, after everything Mom and Dad did for you. Everything they did for me? I laughed, and it sounded harsh even to my own ears. They cut me off. They chose your lie over my truth. They told me there was something wrong with me, that I was toxic, that I wasn't welcome in their lives. So no, they did nothing for me. And neither did you. So you're just going to turn your back on family? That's who you are now. No, Brooke. You turned your back on me 12 years ago. You just didn't expect me to survive it. You didn't expect me to build something without you, without them, without anyone. But I did. This house, this business, this life, I built it from nothing. And you don't get to just walk back in and take advantage of it. She was angry now, the mask fully dropped. You always thought you were better than everyone else. Always so high and mighty. Well, guess what? You're not. You're just bitter and petty and successful, I interrupted. And happy. And free from toxic people who only want me around when they need something from me. This conversation is over. Leave. You're going to regret this, she said, her voice venomous. When you realize how lonely you are, when you need family and have no one, you're going to regret treating me this way. I've been lonely for 12 years, Brooke. I learned to live with it. And then I learned to fill my life with people who actually care about me, who don't use me, who don't lie about me. So no, I don't think I'll regret this. But you might. Because this was your one chance to apologize, to acknowledge what you did, to maybe, possibly rebuild something. And instead, you showed up entitled and demanding, proving you haven't changed at all. I stepped back and started closing the door. She put her hand out to stop it. Wait. Just wait. Okay, maybe I should have called first. Maybe I should have approached this differently. Can we just talk? Really talk? I looked at her hand on my door, then at her face. For a split second, I saw something that might have been genuine emotion. But I'd fallen for that before. I'd spent years falling for her manipulations. No. We have nothing to talk about. Goodbye, Brooke. I closed the door firmly and locked it. Stood there with my back against it, shaking with adrenaline and anger and something that felt like grief but also like liberation. She rang the doorbell 3 more times. Then she knocked. Then she stood outside yelling about how I was making a mistake, how I'd regret this, how she'd tell the family what I'd done. I turned on music to drown her out and went back to unpacking. Eventually, she left. I watched from an upstairs window as she got in her car and drove away, her face twisted with fury. I sat down on the floor of my new bedroom and cried. Not sad tears, exactly. Release tears. Anger tears. Tears for the years lost, for the family I'd never really had, for the girl I'd been who'd believed that if she just tried hard enough, she could make them love her. That night, I called my therapist. Yes, I'd been in therapy for years. You don't survive family abandonment without some professional help processing it. I told her what happened, how I'd felt, how I'd responded. How do you feel now? She asked. Angry. Sad. But also, powerful? Is that weird? I feel powerful. Not weird at all. You set a boundary. You protected your space and your peace. That's incredibly powerful, especially with someone who's hurt you so deeply. She acted like nothing had happened. Like 12 years was nothing. Because to her, it probably was nothing. She wasn't the one suffering. She wasn't the one cut off. She had everything she wanted, your absence and the family's full attention. She only came back when she needed something from you. That truth settled into my bones. Brooke hadn't come back because she missed me or because she'd realized what she'd done was wrong. She'd come back because she needed something, and she assumed I'd be the same pushover I'd always been. But I wasn't. And that felt good. The next few weeks were quiet. I finished settling into the house, focused on my business, started making the estate feel like home. I half expected more contact from Brooke or other family members, but nothing came. Then, about a month after she'd shown up, I got a message on social media from my cousin Rachel. We'd been close as kids, but she'd sided with the family during the cutoff. The message said, "Hey Quinn. I know we haven't talked in forever, but I wanted you to know that Brooke told everyone what happened. She said you refused to help her when she needed a place to stay, that you were cruel and vindictive, that you rubbed your success in her face. Just wanted to give you a heads up that the family is pretty upset." I stared at that message for a long time. My first instinct was to defend myself, to explain what really happened, to try once again to make them see the truth. But then I realized something. It didn't matter. Their opinion of me hadn't mattered in 12 years. Why would it matter now? I typed back, "Thanks for letting me know. For what it's worth, that's not what happened. But I've learned that trying to defend myself to people who've already decided I'm the villain is pointless. If they want to believe her version, that's their choice. I'm at peace with mine." Rachel responded almost immediately. "For what it's worth, I'm starting to question a lot of things about that whole situation back then. Brooke's story has changed a few times over the years, and seeing how she's acting now makes me wonder. Maybe we all got it wrong." That message meant more than it probably should have. One person questioning the narrative. One crack in the wall of certainty. I wrote back, "I appreciate you saying that. But I'm not looking for vindication from the family anymore. I've built a good life without them, and I'm okay with that." And I was. 12 years ago, I would have done anything for one person to believe me, to take my side, to question Brooke's story. Now? It was nice, but it wasn't necessary. I didn't need their validation anymore. Over the next few months, a few other family members reached out. Tentative messages, asking how I was, commenting on my business success, making vague noises about reconnecting. I was polite but distant. I didn't owe them my time or energy just because they'd suddenly decided maybe they'd been wrong about me. My mother called once. I let it go to voicemail. She said she'd heard I was doing well, that she'd love to see me sometime, that maybe we could have lunch. No apology. No acknowledgement of the 12 years she'd refused to speak to me. Just an expectation that I'd be available when she decided she wanted contact. I didn't call back. My father sent a letter. Actual handwritten letter. It was awkward and formal, saying he'd heard about my success and was proud of what I'd accomplished. That he hoped we could move forward from the past. Again, no apology. No accountability. Just a desire to move forward as if the past could be erased by ignoring it. I didn't respond to that either. Brooke tried a few more times to contact me. Texts that ranged from friendly to hostile. Voicemails that alternated between apologies and accusations. I blocked her number eventually. Through Rachel, I learned that Brooke's life had gotten more complicated. She'd lost her job, was struggling financially, had burned through most of her relationships. Apparently, the pattern of manipulation and victimhood that had worked on our family didn't work as well in the real world. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me just felt sad. Sad that this was my family, these were the people I'd once loved and who'd thrown me away so easily. But mostly, I felt free. Free from the weight of their expectations, their judgments, their dysfunction. I'd built something beautiful from the ashes of their rejection. And that was enough. My business continued to grow. I started a mentorship program for young bakers and entrepreneurs, helping others build their dreams. I developed deeper friendships with people who valued me for who I actually was. I dated, traveled, invested in my community. I built a life that was full and meaningful without any of them in it. Now, 2 years after Brooke showed up at my door, I can say with complete honesty, I don't hate them anymore. I don't wish them ill. But I also don't need them. I don't need their approval, their presence, or their validation. They made a choice 12 years ago. They chose a comfortable lie over an uncomfortable truth. They chose Brooke's drama over my honesty. They chose to believe I was capable of the worst rather than question whether they might be wrong. Those choices have consequences. And the consequence is that I built a life they're not part of. Sometimes people ask me if I'd ever reconcile with them if they genuinely apologized. Honestly? I don't know. Real apologies, ones that acknowledge harm and take responsibility, are powerful. But I also know that some relationships, once broken, can't be fully repaired. The trust is gone. The foundation is cracked. What I do know is that I won't sacrifice my peace for their comfort ever again. I won't shrink myself to make them feel better about their choices. I won't pretend that 12 years of abandonment can be erased with a casual lunch invitation. If they want a relationship with me, it will have to be built from the ground up. With accountability. With genuine remorse. With sustained changed behavior over time. And even then, it would be a different relationship than what we had before. Because I'm a different person than I was before. The Quinn they threw away was desperate for their love, willing to accept crumbs of affection, eager to prove her worth. That Quinn doesn't exist anymore. The Quinn who opened the door to Brooke and said no, who set boundaries and protected her peace, who built an empire from nothing, that's who I am now. And I'm not going back. People talk about forgiveness like it's something you owe people who hurt you. But I've learned that forgiveness is complicated. I've forgiven them in the sense that I don't carry active hatred anymore. I processed the pain, worked through the trauma, made peace with what happened. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean giving them access to hurt me again. It doesn't mean pretending the past didn't happen. I've forgiven them for me, so I could move forward. Not for them, so they could feel better. And that's the message I want anyone listening to hear. If you've been betrayed by family, if you've been the scapegoat, if you've been cut off for things you didn't do, your healing doesn't require their participation. Your worth doesn't depend on their acknowledgement. Build your life. Build it beautiful and strong and full of people who see you, value you, choose you. And when the people who abandoned you come back because they need something or because they've decided you're valuable now that you're successful, you have every right to protect what you've built. You don't owe them access to the life they tried to destroy. You don't owe them a relationship just because you share DNA. You don't owe them anything except what you choose to give freely, on your terms. I chose to say no. And it was the most powerful thing I've ever done. My name is Quinn. I was destroyed by family betrayal and I rebuilt myself into someone they no longer recognize. Someone who doesn't need their approval. Someone who knows her worth and won't settle for less than she deserves. And if that makes me the villain in their story, I'm okay with that. Because in my story, I'm the hero who survived, who thrived, who built an empire on the foundation of their rejection. That's better than any reconciliation they could offer. Now I want to hear from you. Have you been scapegoated by your family? Have you been blamed for things you didn't do? How did you survive it? Share your story in the comments below because your experience matters and might help someone else who's going through their own version of family betrayal. And please, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell because I'll continue sharing stories about surviving family dysfunction, setting boundaries, and building lives of success from the ashes of rejection.